this special meeting of the GCSD Board of Directors for August 4th, 2022 to order. And start with a roll call, please.
Director Dye.
Here.
Director Marsh.
Here.
Director Sukamel.
Here.
Director Seaton.
Here.
And Director Clark is popping on now.
Great.
Good
Are you
evening.
here?
Yep, and he's here.
Great.
All are here, and I'm Chuck Duffy, the General Manager. We have Delia Comito, the Assistant General Manager on, and Bill Parkin, our Legal Counsel.
All right. Our first item is to approve a resolution proclaiming a local emergency and so forth so that we can continue to do our meetings remotely via Zoom. Can I have a motion to approve that?
Yeah, and can I change two dates on that, please?
Sure.
So the first date to change is on page 9. The resolution shall be effective to the earlier of September 3rd, not August 13th. And then at the bottom, it said it'll be approved at this meeting, which is August 4th, 2022.
Okay.
And that's it.
We have a motion to approve this as amended.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. Can we have a roll?
Further, just one thing on further discussion. Assuming that we are going to get back into in-person meetings sometime, are we exploring what we would need to bring into our meeting space so that we could do hybrid meetings? I've been doing them with another board, and they do take some audiovisual stuff, and the complication of doing PCT along with it will probably take some consultation with them. So I guess my point is I don't want us to wait until we're ready to walk into public meetings before we explore that.
I would reach out to the MCC because they were considering hybrid meetings. I don't know if they ever got there though.
Not so far. Not the last meeting, I don't think. But yes.
What is not doing any hybrid meetings yet, but Dave Olson has got the technology, so you can ask him, and it's probably lodged where you're having your meeting right now. Coastside Fire Protection District, they have the best hybrid system, and they're using it for the last 3 months. They meet at the fire station in El Granada, and 2 or 3 board members show up, and the rest are all remote. But it works out really good. So there's another resource for you guys to inquire.
I think the county supervisors are doing hybrid meetings now too. So there's another source.
I think as long as we can do them and connect to PCT so that all the sound from the people remote and people in the room gets captured, I think that's the really most complicated part. But MCC has to do that, so maybe they have sorted that out, or any of the public agencies. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, I'd be happy to talk to the fire district about what they're doing, and also Dave about the plans. Is there anyone else who really wants to get into this? I know, Nancy, you're going to be traveling, so it doesn't make sense for you.
No, I just wanted to put it out there as we do this resolution every month. At some point, we're going to say we're going back in.
Chuck, do you have anything to say to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of technology out there, and we can certainly talk to the fire department since it sounds like they're doing a good job on it. Part of the broader question is, does your board want to do hybrid meetings? I've heard some kind of, I won't say nightmare tales, that's a little over-exaggeration, but it makes it strange, and having sat in a lot of meetings where there's 3 or 4 people at a table and a few people on a Zoom monitor, it's unwieldy, to say the least. But that's your board's decision. But I think that's the first question you want to ask. If we go back in person, do we stay in person, or do we keep this hybrid?
Bill, do we know when the legislation is going to stop allowing us to do it this way? I really think that this allows the public to participate more easily. It seems pretty good to me.
Well, so there's, this can go on for a while, but the reality is that, if you decide to go in person, then we get back to the original format is if one of you, first of all, you'd have to have a quorum present in the district. But then if you as a board member decide to stay at remote, then you're going to have to post your house and, open your door and, because the law hasn't caught up with board members being hybrid. There would be no limitation, however, in allowing members of the public to appear hybrid. So I think there's a distinction there that you can always have the public appear remotely and in a hybrid fashion. But the more complicated question is, right now the choice is between the board being remote or being in person, with the usual teleconference exception for board members that is standard. That's been standard for years. If that makes sense.
Do we have a sense of how long this current local emergency, when does it expire now? And do we have a sense of whether it would be extended further?
Well, it's, I can tell you that this can go on for quite a while still. I mean, the legislation ends in, I want to say at the end of next year. Don't quote me on that, but there's some time left on the, legislative fix that allow these meetings to continue. And, as long as there's a local emergency declared, you can do it. I think if you were to go back in person, then it starts to get more difficult to then declare an emergency to go back remotely. If for some reason, you would want some really good declaration from the local health official or a governor to go back in person. So to go back to remote if you go in person. So that's sort of, that's off the cuff, off the top of my head. I think that's what it's looking like.
All right. Well, we will follow up on this and maybe bring back a report.
My feedback is that I feel like we eventually got to look at going back to in-person meeting at some point. But I think more importantly is that I feel like we need to set up the long-term plan to always have this option, at least for the public, in place, no matter what. So when we do go back to in-person, there's gonna be some people that want to just come in there with their families, pop out from dinner, say what they want to say, tie in, and then listen to the rest of it. And so I think we plan on keeping that, and we put in what we need to do to have that ready to go. And then, everything else as far as what he talked about, if we need to post notices, if the board members aren't going to be in person, I think that's a separate topic. But I think, let's address that, what needs to happen, and, look more into that. But so, yeah, I think for sure it's here to stay, though, for the publics. I
agree with you, David. Good point. All right. Well, I guess we have a motion on the table to approve the resolution. There's no further discussion. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Dye.
Yes.
Director Marsh.
Yes.
Director Seaton.
Aye.
Director Clark.
Aye.
And Director Sukamel.
Yes.
Okay. On motion of Director Clark, seconded by Director Marsh, motion passes 5-0.
All right, moving on to the public hearing. Do I open the public hearing?
Yes.
To consider a sewer service charge increase and related fee resolution in accordance with Articles 13C and D of the California Constitution.
Okay, and included in this item, turn to that page. Included in this item is the 218 notice we sent out. Obviously, the resolution that we have drafted, a fee resolution imposing these increases, and the Bartles and Wells report, which provides the backdrop and background for these rate increases. And as I point out in my memo, they're generally, a lot of our costs, 65 to 70% of our costs, SAM costs, and SAM costs. And SAM costs have increased on an O&M basis over the past, 5 or 6 years, certainly. And then they're putting forward a capital improvement plan of $2.5 to $3 million. We will have to pay our roughly 20% share of that in the future. And we have also, your board has made the decision to allocate property tax monies to the Parks and Recreation side rather than the sewer side. in accordance with the LAO's recommendations. So we've discussed this at our earlier June meeting and then a subsequent June meeting as well. Your board saw the preliminary budget and the 5-year budget at that time. And obviously you preliminarily approved this rate increase. So this is the resolution that enacts it.
Chuck, do you want to mention the other aspect of the less income from some sources?
The assessment district?
Oh, the assessment district. Yeah. So yeah, we've been getting paid back from the assessment district approximately $300,000 a year. So the general district had loaned them money to start the assessment district to fund their reserve fund, as well as a couple of the other funds. That money will be drying up. We'll get our last payment this fiscal year. So we'll get roughly $300,000 payment this fiscal year. And then that money will be going away as well. So thank you for bringing that up, Matthew.
I will point out that both SAM and GCSD are dealing with major infrastructure upgrades. I know that our staff report always says that our sewer mains date back to 1920, but in fact, they date back to 1910. Sewer mains were put in by Christensen in 1910. So I think it's time, though they've held up really well, but we at GCSD are doing a proactive job of doing a capital improvement program. And then, as I have mentioned before to this community, the $3 million that the sewer authority will be spending, we hope, on capital improvements include replacing the Princeton pump station, which affects our sewer service significantly here in GCSD. So this is an increase for people, but it's going for very specific sewer related improvements that will make our system even better. So that's something we need to, I think, move forward with. Do I need to do something further to open the public hearing?
No, you've opened the public hearing, so now you should, and I'll just report now, and Delia, we've gotten one letter of protest, Delia, one written letter of protest. Yeah, so we've only gotten one written letter of protest, so now you can ask if anyone in the public would like to comment on this.
Is there anyone in the public who'd like to comment on this matter? All right, hearing none, I will close the public hearing.
Yep.
And look for a motion to approve the sewer service charge increase in related.
So yeah, are we going to talk about it all?
No, of course, go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
We could always have discussion after a motion, David. So I wasn't cutting you off.
Okay, yeah, sure. I just feel like at some point you look at everything and you keep looking out into the future. And is it really required to have 4 different agencies involved in sanitary on the coast? And if you ask that question to anyone trying to set up what the most functional system would be on the coast, we would never have 4 separate agencies and 4 separate cost centers and so many different of the same overlapping functions. It would never make sense to go like that. And at some point, there needs to be serious discussion in good faith between the board members about synergies and overlapping functions that could be merged and have the same exact benefit to the coast at reduced savings. There needs to be a good faith discussion between the boards that, and eventually I feel like if it's not done, it's going to be mandated or there needs to be a mandate if it's not being done in good faith, because we're so far off from where we should be in terms of a coastside working together with one sanitary district, the way that it was envisioned, and having 4 cost centers that are overlapping, and it's sad. I mean,
all right. Thank you, David.
Look what we get out of it with lawsuits and everything else, and it really makes no sense to me. I don't see how it can make much sense to anyone else.
I hear your point, David. I would just say that the capital improvements that we're doing, we are paying for as part of SAM, which is exactly what you're talking about, is a cooperative and coordinated effort to provide sewer treatment. And our own capital improvement program is just repairing the lines here and not the lines in the other communities on the coast side. So I think, you've made this point before, David, and I think it's a valid point, but I think at this.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the sewer service charges increase. I'm saying it doesn't have to be that way, that there's plenty of cost savings.
The cost
If we were
would happen.
serious, so if we were to wipe out
what.
easily 50% of the overlapping cost centers, some people would say we could wipe out 75% in a lot of areas. That that's 75%, not to mention the synergies that would come from other issues that would go away. I mean, to me, it's crazy that we keep raising the rate on taxpayers instead of seriously looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, would any community have 4 sanitary districts involved in? I mean, it makes no sense that
I know, David,
that we've gone this far, and then in good faith, we're not all at the table together saying, why aren't we on the same page doing it like other communities would do? We have one coastside sanitary district. We have one plant. We don't need 4.
We would still have to replace the Princeton
in
pump
so many
station
areas.
and our early lines. David, I know that's your point and it's important to you, and I think
we would have to replace it, but not at the expense of the taxpayers. My point. We could be doing the replacements at the expense of. We'd be in a better position because when you reduce a lot of areas would overlapping costs would go to would go to 1x instead of 4x.
But most of the costs involved here are the actual infrastructure costs. Thank you, David. That's a valid point, and I'm glad you got it onto the record of this meeting.
But no one ever has any response, which is I
have a response.
It goes nowhere.
I have a response.
You said it was envisioned that we should have a single system and a single sanitary district. Not true. Go back and look at the history of how and when SAM was formed. That was never in the mix. It was never envisioned that way. And it's because the people who are being affected liked the system they have, and the people who are being affected now still like this system.
But I would say they didn't have the degree of the cost centers and the millions in costs.
We're talking about 50%.
The growth of each agency that's taken place over the past half century.
David,
we haven't addressed it.
Matthew asked to speak, and then Nancy raised her hand. Let's hear from Nancy, and then David, you can speak again if you'd like.
Well, I think it's a fair point. As somebody who's been an organization designer, if I were designing the optimal management for a sewer plant and services for the coast side, I wouldn't design it this way. It is complex, and particularly the board dynamics of SAM are complex. It's a fair point. I have looked at the numbers because numbers get thrown out, and I have some experience managing medical labs and looking at detailed costs. And I looked at, particularly on page 24 of our pack today, at what costs really are fungible. So everything associated with the plant. So everything we pay for to SAM and what we pay to SAM for managing the collection system is really set, which is 1.2 million out of the 2 million expense budget. So I just looked at the other 800,000 because that's everything with SAM is set and doesn't change if we don't have multiple agencies. So there still are going to be customer serving functions. A significant portion of our 800,000 is about 300,000 for our employees. So there still are customer serving functions, helping them with their permits and so on. And so I just looked at the other 500,000, and where there's the most fungible is in some of the management and professional services costs, maybe the office costs. But out of what the 500,000 left, say there is overlap of 300,000 or 400,000. That's not inconsequential, and we are 25% of the coastside system. So if you extrapolate that, you're looking at, in those costs, maybe about 1.5 million total across all the districts. And so if you could save 30% of those, because I don't think they're all being super wasteful. It's maybe even $500,000, which on the coast side will be somewhere between $30 and $50 per ratepayer. The challenge comes, and everybody would love to have $30 or $50 less. The challenge comes specifically for El Granada, because even at the third year of this increase, we're at $860. In the same year, Half Moon Bay is at $1,344, and Montera is even more than that now. And so the most efficient billing, if you're going to do treat it all like one system, is to do what we do and what Half Moon Bay does, and average your costs across all your ratepayers and charge that average on the bill. If you average $1,300 and $850 and more than $1,500 for Montera, what happens to our constituents is the costs go up significantly. They don't get that $50 savings. They get a significant increase. And so that, for our ratepayers, and it's not an argument for the whole coast and reducing total cost on the whole coast, but for our ratepayers, keeping them separate keeps their costs the lowest. And as we've noted, amongst the lowest in the whole county.
Any further discussion? Good
Yeah,
point,
just at some-
Nancy.
Barbara, I just want to thank Nancy. I think they really,
Yes.
that was a good faith look at what the numbers say as far as the budget goes. And I think it really puts it starkly that Director Seaton's not wrong. There may be some opportunities for cost savings, but as someone who was elected to represent the GCSD community, we have to be looking out for what makes the most sense for our constituents. And I think Nancy's analysis really puts it pretty clearly, like what that is.
And everything can be done, just so you know,
Thank you,
in the
Eric.
same exact, thanks, Eric. Everything can be done in the same exact format with representation by geography. There's a SAM board, there's a separation between Half Moon Bay elected board members, GCSD, and Montera.
I think, David, to your
You
point,
just cut out all the millions and millions in savings across all the agency and still protect the interests in the same exact way that a board
It's
member
not-
will protect interests, only
not millions and
potentially
millions.
over a 5 or 10 year period, reducing millions a year, because that's in perpetuity
It's
also.
not millions.
That's millions a year.
Not millions.
It is, because you have 4 agencies.
David, you're not looking at the
And-
numbers. You're making stuff
I am
up.
looking at the combined savings of 4 and then forget about the lawsuits. Forget about that. That's
No, it's not
others.
millions.
That
You
yes.
only spend
Forget
$8
about
million
that. Those
between us.
each agency spending 4x on lawsuits, suing each other. It's almost inconceivable.
We're not
that-
suing each other. Half Moon Bay
It's-
sued us.
It's almost inconceivable where things are at, and the amount of waste that goes on, and the fact that there's no good faith to say, you know what, as a co-side, we could, especially, looking at some other agencies, we could probably save $4 or $5 million a year in perpetuity across all 4 agencies.
And that number,
With a
great.
good faith.
David, that number's just not true, and I wish you'd stop.
It is true, because I'm saying us, GCSD is a small part of it. A lot of these other agencies, yeah, I agree. They're double and triple what we are. And they have more. So those, you
But
reduce
David,
from 4X
much of
to
the
1X
costs are
in a
hard
lot of
costs.
areas when it comes to general manager costs and other compensation like that. And it goes from 4X to 1X in perpetuity. Not 1 year, that's in perpetuity, those savings.
And I
And
want
the fact that we're not looking at it and people are defensive, oh, we can't do it. It's really, to me, at some point, when it's all said and done, we're going to look back on these videos and say, man, everybody, let's see your guys as the board and these other agencies. What have we done for the coast side, and what could have been done as a sanitary district, and what has been done? And there's no good faith when it comes to it's easy to raise the rate on taxpayers. It's much harder to put our heads together and find those cost savings that we all know are out there. We all know if we look hard enough, and we're not going to deny it, are out there. We just got to
I
look
think
hard
we all
enough
deny it.
and
Dave.
do it.
We all deny it. We all feel that there are hard costs that need to be covered. And that while there are some savings, as Nancy has done an excellent job of analyzing, a few savings for administrative costs, they pale in comparison to what you're talking about. So let's make it clear that I don't think anyone here agrees with you. And I think we need to move on here. So
Agrees with me to not take a good faith look at finding cost savings.
I think we have given a
That's a
very
basic
good
tenet
faith
of
look
the
at it.
JPA.
We all
That's a basic
operate-
tenet of the JPA.
David,
And you're saying you all disagree with me on that.
we
Interesting.
disagree with you in good faith, and we have all
I
done a
made a
good
good
faith
faith
look at this.
review of the costs. So stop saying I didn't. I just went through in detail the costs.
And Nancy, I don't want to steal Nancy's thunder here, but I did the same thing you did 5 or 6 years ago when this came up first. And as I pointed out at that time, we look at the economies of scale, and it's minute, as you point out, Nancy. And there's also our old friend, the second chapter of economics, the diseconomies of scale, and that pretends. So could there be more efficiencies? Obviously, but for the GCSD ratepayers, it doesn't pan out.
All right, can we have a motion, please, to
Barbara,
approve
Barbara.
the resolution?
I'm sorry, Barbara. I don't, I think I heard you say you closed the public hearing. I just want to confirm that you closed.
I did close the public hearing.
Thank you for confirming. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. I think I closed the public hearing.
You
Yes.
did. Yes,
Yes.
you opened and
Okay.
closed. Yes.
So now I need a motion to approve the resolution to approve the sewer service charge increase. And
So moved.
Second,
do we have any further discussion? David, we understand your position and we don't agree with you, but we accept it. And I think we heard it. So
Yeah.
any further
Yeah,
discussion?
yeah,
Let's have a roll call.
Director
Yeah.
Dye,
Aye.
Director Marsh,
Aye.
Director Seaton,
Aye.
Director Clark,
aye.
and Director Sukamel.
Yes.
Okay, on motion of Director Marsh, seconded by Director Clark, motion passes 5-0.
Now, do we need to take a break until 7:30 for the next
Well,
item?
we can do Don Merkis's group 4,
Okay.
item
Let's
number
move.
5.
We're going to move on to item number 5, consideration of agreement with Group 4 Architecture Research and Planning Inc. for architectural design services for the proposed community center. Can we have a report from staff report? And Nancy, I don't know if you want to speak to this.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I think Chuck will describe it's our standard agreement.
Yeah, so what we've done here, so your board took action, I forget what, 3 or 4 months ago to engage with Group 4 Architecture to do the preliminary scoping and design for the proposed community center. And since that time, Nancy and Barbara and myself have met several times with Don Merkis, who's the lead architect for our job. And we've been working through this agreement. And as Nancy says, this is our standard independent contractors agreement. And we've just attached their scope of work to it along with their proposed price. Their base price is $118,000. We've got a couple add-ons that we'll be doing, such as the geotechnical. Possibly most importantly, we will have be hiring someone to give us a park estimate, which is a very important piece of that park because we're flying a little bit blind without that. Now, obviously, that's not in my wheelhouse of expertise. So I would recommend to your board that we continue our work with Group 4 and enter into this agreement and get the process or keep the process moving.
To be clear, this agreement is not, all the way to construction. It gets us just to a schematic drawing with a budget estimate for construction. Since we don't know what things cost, it's hard to really focus on here's what we want to put in and here's what we don't want to put in and here's how big it needs to be. So this will be a bit of an iterative process to get us to a design that feels right given the input that we've gotten, and get us a cost estimate on it. And so we can do a check step from the cost estimate that Chuck put together in February, projecting costs out 5 years, whether we're in that scope or higher or lower. And that will dictate really our next step to go to a more detailed process of design for permitting. So this is just getting us from here to the schematic drawing.
And Nancy and I are both very excited about this group. They've done many community centers and they get completely rave reviews from everyone they've worked with, which is wonderful. Let me say that they have also helped us by subcontracting out geotechnical, which they will need for the building, which actually will also do the work for the park. And this includes an extra charge for that, but also for the costing, which is going to get a professional person to come and give us some estimates on the costs of both of these items. So I think we're in good hands with this group, and I trust the lawyers have gone through all of this
Yes.
and figured it all out. And I think can we have a motion to approve?
As far as driving, go ahead, Eric.
So this is tangentially related. I think we should add an agenda item at a meeting soon about considering extending the Picasso preschool lease for another year. If we are entering into a contract in August 2022 for a schematic design and preliminary cost as an output, there's just very little chance in my mind we would be breaking ground on construction within another year after the Picasso lease expires. And I would hate to see that lease end earlier than it needed to, particularly in consideration of difficulties in early childcare on the coast.
And I would second that at a minimum.
I think the initial timeline, which one of the things that Don gets credit for is trying to hold things to the timelines, would have had us, about the October, November timeframe breaking ground, but it also would have had us finishing the contract maybe in June. So as these things go, I think it's worth a discussion, particularly once we get together with Don and do a really realistic timeline.
I would support that. I think that's fine. I just wanted to add one other thing about this current contract. It includes quite a bit of community consultation. So as always, with everything we do, we try to go to the community and involve our community in helping make the decisions as to what's going to happen there. Can we put that on our next agenda, Chuck?
Yeah. How about September? Because our next agenda is going to be done a week from now.
Okay.
And
Nancy will be back for that, which I think.
Yeah, I won't be at the next meeting.
Okay. So we'll put it on September.
Okay. Sounds good. Good suggestion, Eric.
So the September meeting, we're going to be talking about what types of ideas we want to see with the community center and the space and that type of discussion, or what?
No, at the September when we're going to talk about potentially extending the Picasso lease for an additional year.
I don't think they'll have that information ready, David, by September.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. Are we going to also long-term what the space is going to be, what the expansion is going to consist of? I feel like we spent so much money that I felt was wasted at the time on all this architecture and design planning for buildings we never owned. And so I'm interested to see, now that we own a building, the level of group discussion, public outreach in terms of saying, hey, before we spend all this money with group 4, what, when we have this building, what specifically can we utilize this space for? And what type of big picture things does the community want to see with this space before we start moving too far along the line with group 4?
That's the purpose of this. That's why I kind of framed it as a scoping and a preliminary design of this piece. They're not going to go down to the nuts and bolts of an actual constructible design. They're going to work with your board to grab your vision, put it together, and see what the community wants and what your board would like.
All that we did previously was spend, I think it was less than $10,000 with an architect to evaluate the fire department space. And out of that develop from our community input we had so far, what would fit into it. And, you know, that's kind of the starting point for programming is what can we learn from the community input we have so far, but it's a very thin starting point, but we haven't spent significant money on.
Yeah, I'm saying we have on other buildings, that one, other ones that we spend money on that we don't own. Now that we own this, I'm just saying I'm interested to see
I don't know what other ones you're talking about.
What are you talking about?
other
only
potential
employee
projects that we've looked at. Other potential projects over time in the past. And so what I'm saying is that now that we own this building, hopefully we'll be doing a good outreach with the board in terms of what we want to see long-term and also the public, what they want to see with this specific
They
space.
specialize in that. That's really important to them. And
Yeah.
That's
And so
exactly,
is that,
people who are going to really help us with
this
that.
proposal is exactly what you're talking about, David.
and is that included in that, their presentation and all that? That's all.
Absolutely.
That's all. Okay, so that will
It's a very
take us-
interactive process. Yeah.
Okay, so they'll be including that as a couple months out where they'll be taking results of different things and then presenting it to the board and having.
They're not going to work in a vacuum and drop.
Well, yeah, that's what I was asking versus having Nancy and Barbara, you know, meet with them a few times. You know, I mean, there's different ways to go about it. So I'm just getting an idea of the framework.
There are both project team meetings and board meetings in there listed in the attachment.
And community meetings.
And community meetings.
Yes.
And
That's
is there?
we like these people is they're very good at that. They do a great job. I mean, they get rave reviews from every place that they've worked for their work, the way they worked with the community and the way they came up with a plan that was really consistent with what the community wants in the community's budget. So I feel really good that we've chosen some people who are going to do a good job for us about coming up with something that works for our community.
Yeah, it's awesome. And one of the things I think that I want to see is that the space fully utilized. And one of the things I think that's been talked about is there a possibility to have a small dedicated space that could be leased out to some type of preschool in a minimal capacity that could be there during certain hours? Is that something that could be worked into this to explore that and to say, you know, obviously within the, you know, requirements to have separate bathrooms and things like that, you know, what are the possibilities that we could say dedicate, you know, 1,200 square feet of space or something that in a limited capacity we could have a tenant that, because to me it would serve our purpose as serving a community, and you see so many community centers that do have that. I think it'd be something we really need to explore, especially considering the past history of the building and who we're displacing in a community that has no early childcare. For our Granada school doesn't offer those services as a community service district. I think it's almost part of our charter that we have to be looking out for those kids that their parents that live locally, you're displacing them with and so I think there's so many synergies that could come from at least exploring it and saying, okay, this is a plan of how it would look if you had that option to have a preschool type tenant. Okay. This is the option of what you could do and all the cool stuff if you didn't have that. And so that's something I'm interested in, and hopefully, hopefully this company can explore that.
I hear you, Eric. Matthew has his hand up, but Nancy actually had her physical hand up first. So I'm going to call on her and then Matthew.
Okay, I did mention this actually at a previous meeting, but I'll mention it again here, David. We heard actually from the community and from members of the board the question about whether a preschool could be accommodated, and we've just been collecting information so that we know what we're talking about when we get to have that discussion. I have had a discussion with the current operator to learn what specifically is required. So when you say, a little space that could be used for other purposes outside hours, that actually what's required is 35 square feet per child, a separate restroom. It has to be a dedicated space. According to what Candace has told me, it's not something that you could use for different purposes at other types of day. It has to be access restricted, and it has to have 75 accessible to it, adjacent to it, 75 square feet per child for a play area that is also dedicated to that preschool and not accessible otherwise. The playground.
I would disagree with your last point. The play area can be accessible at outside areas. And that's an important point because the inside area needs to be locked up and secured. But the shared space that they
This
play
is not the, this is
gonna
not the
go-
night to have this discussion.
Okay,
David,
well,
let me-
I'm saying it's important.
Let me finish what I learned from Candace. It has to be a dedicated play space adjacent. The playground that we're going to have 100 yards away in the park, it's not, cannot be used. It's too far. It has to be adjacent and dedicated. So we would need a separate and additional playground adjacent to the play space.
But we will commit.
I'm also talking to other operators just to get their ideas. I looked at the preschool room at Los Altos Community Center. Barbara talked to another community center that has that. We are on a learning journey. We're not ignoring it.
Absolutely. And that's where I think is an important, for me, it's an important part because I'm open-minded about everything and can be swayed. And if I've, given those requirements, I feel like this is where a company could really show the renderings of saying, listen, great idea, but when you really put it into play, this is how it's going to look and this is how it's going to limit the building. What I was saying is I agree. You have to have the secured building that's dedicated, but the common areas can be utilized by other groups at outside hours. So once the school goes away, other people could use the playground or use the conference room or use another room that they might have access to during the day that then somebody else might use after hours.
I think we all need to understand what the rules are. Matthew, did you ever get to make your comment? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that Director Seaton, and you've been told this now 3 times again tonight. You're failing to understand that what we're talking about with Group 4 is moving forward toward and facilitating the discussions that you want to have and the decision to be made about whether the preschool might be granted another year because of our building schedule. So let's get on with it, and then it will move your point forward as well.
All right. At that point, unless there's further discussion, I don't think we have a motion yet on
We don't.
approving the contract. Can we have a motion to approve the contract? Which includes all of this public outreach.
I will move to approve the contract.
Right. It includes all this public outreach and the information that we will need to have these conversations. Is there a second?
A second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the contract with Group 4 Architecture, can we have a roll call, please?
That's the roll call, yeah. Director Dye?
Aye.
Director Marsh?
Aye.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Seaton?
Aye.
And Director Sukamel?
Yeah.
Okay, on motion of Director Clark, seconded by Director Marsh, motion passes 5-0.
All right, since we have a few minutes, can we discuss, I'd like to just, I don't know if we were going to have a staff report. I wanted to talk about the timing of an outreach event for Burnham Park stuff.
Just a process question.
Yes.
I thought this whole meeting was a special meeting. I didn't think we had a 6:30 start and a 7:30 start. It's not written that way on the agenda.
No, yeah, this whole meeting is a special meeting. The problem is we have 3 notices. So we noticed the Prop 218 process at 6:30, and we have a public hearing that starts at 7:30 for the sewer service charges being placed in the tax roll and for the budget itself.
Okay,
So it's all one meeting though, but
Didn't
the
get
public
that.
hearings are at different times.
got it.
So I don't know if you had anything you wanted to talk about for general manager's report. I can talk about this
I
item.
don't have a general manager's report on the agenda.
Yeah, none of that is on the agenda.
But we were going to talk about this as part of, you said we could talk about this tonight. Yes?
Talk about
The
I
fact
missed your
that
front
we
part.
have tentatively scheduled this is just, I guess, a notice to the public,
Right.
a meeting to provide community input on the various facilities that are proposed for Burnham Park. It would be held on the 27th in the afternoon, so the end of August. And it would, for example, they will have poster boards that will have 3 different styles of playground equipment. And they will also have various options for exercise equipment, picnic tables, and so forth. And we also will have the opportunity for others to make a proposal for an alternative name for the park. And we will invite the community. The plan is to invite the community to the Burnham Strip that on the afternoon. And then we're going to have stickers for people to say, I love it. I'd like it. Okay. I don't like it. And we're thinking about making the stickers different for people who live within GCSD and who don't live within GCSD. So we can really hone in on what our community wants and just get some feedback from all of them on these various issues.
And what was the tentative date for that,
The
Barbara?
27th, which is a Saturday afternoon, August 27th. It's before, school has already started, but we're hoping that a Saturday afternoon we can get a bunch of combination of adults and kids to come and look at some of these options, and they can look at the plans for the park. We had the plans out at the pump track event. We had quite a few people come and expressed interest in looking at those plans. So, and providing us more feedback. So this is not, an official meeting in any way. It's just an opportunity. Our designers will be, K&K will be there, and we will be showing people getting feedback from the community on some of the amenities of the park.
Is there a proposed start time?
At this point, I don't think we'd set that. Maybe at 2 to 5, something like that. I think we should probably have it go for a pretty long time, maybe 3 to 5. Anyone have any thoughts on this? All right, well, I will talk to Tom. Nancy, you have one finger up. Does that mean you want to speak?
One comment. I think from our previous times we've done this, the afternoon is better because people have a lot of sports things in the morning on Saturdays with kids.
So maybe 3 to 5 gets us, mid-afternoon to, late afternoon people. And so we'll have these, we're going to need some more easel stands, but I'm sure we can come up with enough to show various options. So we just get another opportunity to give for the community to provide feedback on the park features.
So if you want to have like parents come and comment, tot lot jumper, are we ready for that? I mean, I'm not sure with COVID and stuff like that, but I occupied a lot of kids in that.
That's a good idea, and probably everybody's had COVID at least once at this point. So,
Yeah, I love it in the location because that literally alone will bring in maybe an extra 500 people. I mean, that's where I think it's important to have the stickers. That's why I love it, because we're doing something like that. You might be getting 90% that are just tourists, and it'd be interesting. Maybe even 3 stickers: GCSD, co-side, and out of area. Because then we could see those 3 layers of the overlapping. But yeah, I think the jumper honestly is unbelievable because it's like a huge billboard that's just going to bring in families and other people that are going to say, "What's that over there?" and check it out, and then we could get their input. So I think whatever we pay for that, it will pay off, and I love the idea.
All right. Well, this is just more of a notification. We aren't really having a discussion of this. This is something that we've worked out with K&K, that they're available, and this seems like a good time to do it as they're more moving forward and refining their design. So, all right,
and Barbara,
that's a report from me.
Yeah, and I think Candace came on after we had gone over public participation. I didn't know if she wanted to say anything. Okay, maybe not.
Candace, did you want to speak? No, maybe not. All right, well, shall we take a brief break until 7 till, yes, Delia?
We did miss public participation, and I just wanted to mention that yesterday, August 3rd, was my 23rd anniversary with the district. It may very well be the last, so I just wanted a chance to get that in before, since it was yesterday. So thanks.
Congratulations. And
Congratulations.
thank you for all your years of hard work.
Thanks.
We did have, I invited people who wanted to speak on items not on the agenda.
Maybe not right at the beginning.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Good.
But since there was no members of the public at that point on, it was just us. I guess I forgot. So,
If Candace or
I
Michelle have anything they'd like to add, this is your
yes.
time.
If anyone would like to speak. All right. Let's take a break for 8 minutes until 7.
Recording
7:30.
stopped.
Okay.
Great. All right. Are we rejoining the meeting? Wait till 7:30 to. And I just go ahead. Do I open number 3 or number 4?
Whichever you choose.
Okay. I think I'll do.
And I'll point out, Matthew pointed out that we swapped 3 and 4.
That's what I was wondering about.
Yeah. They're reversed on the agenda cover page. So
I think I will do 4
the
first.
timing doesn't matter. They're both public hearings independent of each other. So you'll go 4 first, which is the resolution. Okay.
Yeah, because I think that makes more sense.
Yeah.
All right, it's 7:30. Should I take public participation again?
No, because it's all the same meeting.
Okay, I'm opening I'd like to open the public hearing, consideration of a resolution adopting the sewer service charge report and delinquent garbage account report and authorizing the collection of said charges on the FY 2022-23 San Mateo County tax roll. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, so this is what we do each year. We do our sewer billings and delinquent garbage billings, and we place them on the tax roll just for ease of collection. The report that Delia has prepared here incorporates the new rate fee structure, $660 per ERU. And we're looking at collecting more money this year than last for a couple of reasons. One, the rate increases, but 2, during last year, during COVID, a lot of the commercial users didn't use as much water, and that's what their charges are based on. So so we'll be getting a little bit more money from that, thankfully, for both of us. The commercial.
And I'll note that on page 95 of the staff report, it's really interesting is the biggest commercial users are on that page and how much water they use or what their charges are.
Yeah. And I want to thank Delia. She does a great job each year. This is a big task, putting this together and getting the data from CCWD and whatnot. So thank you, Delia.
So this is how we charge people for their sewer charges. They go on their property tax as a separate item. And I want to clarify, we had a little back and forth on Nextdoor. The sewer charges that show up on the property tax bills are these sewer charges that pay only for sewer services and infrastructure repairs and SAM, correct?
Correct.
The property tax money doesn't show up on the property tax bill because what it actually is a little piece of the property tax that everybody pays that comes back to GCSD that we can then use for parks. Correct.
So it's it's roughly 4.5 or 5% of the 1% property tax comes to us. And that's all set by Prop 13 back in 1976 and 8.
Right, which was, yes. And so when people see the sewer charge on their property tax bill, every penny of that goes to administration and repair, maintenance of both our sewer lines and the SAM wastewater treatment plant.
Correct.
It's
Our share.
required by law.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that in case people were wondering. None of the sewer charge on the tax rolls that people see is going for parks.
Correct.
Right. Does anyone have any comments on this? So there's two parts of this, right?
My
One is,
comment is,
go ahead, David.
oh no, I was just gonna say delinquent accounts. I feel like that, yeah, I've talked about it in the
Recording
past.
in
One thing I
progress.
do notice.
Oh, did we?
Yeah.
Do we need to start over since it just got recorded? Okay.
No, it's PCTV records it. Mine's just
Okay.
the backup. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, in terms of, I noticed a lot of new houses that are on this list. So I think that when there's new homeowners, they get so confused about all the different agencies. If they did an outreach, a lot of these people would pay, I think, if they realize that, they're not doing like an introduction email. I think in general, of all the utilities I've paid in my life, they're the clunkiest in terms of when you try to log in, there's like 18 different options, where you're at. When you go to pay, you got to have all the information to pay. I feel like that they could do a better, I've said it before, when you go to outreach them, they don't answer their phone, and then their character length on their website limits you to like 50 characters. So it's like,
Are you talking about Recology here?
I'm talking about Recology can make a lot of improvements and increase these delinquent accounts. And I think these people aren't paying because they don't have the money. I think they just need to clean up their outreach with delinquent accounts and also their login process. There's other utility companies that do trash that I've logged in that do multiple areas. And when you log in, there's just one website. They don't make you log into 18 different, are you the coastside, San Mateo County, the different cities? They could improve so much, and they would increase their collections probably by 50% just with a little bit of thought in terms of, and that's just with us. They have other clients. Like I said, my feedback with them is they need to take a serious look at their collections outreach, and I think it could be improved a lot.
Chuck or Delia, do you have any comment on that?
Well, I just wanted to mention that the number of delinquencies were reduced this year down to 74. The prior year, we had 132. And I see some people that repeatedly are on this list year after year after year. There are people who go all year and do not make one payment to Recology, and they actually just pay it through the tax roll. And those people will always be on this list. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Isn't that like the Leonard Warren Memorial approach to paying your garbage bills?
Yes. In memory, Eric.
I see that we have a member of the public here. Grace Scullion, did you want to speak to this item?
If so, you're muted.
Yeah. Hi. All right, maybe not. I did want to comment that in looking at the charges and so forth, that in the past year, 2021-22, we had only 9 new sewer hookups. So people seem to feel that there's a lot of development going on in El Granada, but these are all pretty much I think one was a duplex and the rest were all single-family homes within the community.
I
So,
think COVID has slowed things down quite a bit because the county has had some difficulty doing their inspections and people getting through the building process. It's really slowed things down.
but that's not a high rate of new hookups for.
No, you're right. Well, we run with our sewer permits, our new hookups are based upon the number of building permits that are issued by the county. So,
Right. And so people who don't pay their recology pay it through their taxes. And so we're authorizing the sewer service charge to go on the property taxes and the delinquent recology charges, correct?
Correct.
All right. Can we have a motion
Can you officially open the public hearing? And
I'd like to
close
open
public hearing?
I want to open the public hearing on this resolution to adopt the sewer service charge report and delinquent garbage account report and
actually,
authorizing
she
it.
did open it when she first came back from the break, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good. I thought I did, but oh well. Is there any further comment on this matter? Well, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and look for a motion to approve this resolution.
So
Barbara,
moved.
it looks like Grace is trying to connect to audio.
Yeah, she's been coming on and off.
Someone said she's from from the Half Moon Bay Review, so she may just be listening, but I don't know if she has a question.
Grace, if you can't get connected to the audio, maybe you can get to the chat.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get a.
Eric made the motion.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Director Seaton,
Aye.
Director Marsh,
Aye.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Clark,
Aye.
and Director Sukamel.
Hi.
Okay, motion of Director Sukamel, seconded by Director Clark. Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Moving on to our second public hearing. I will open the public hearing on the approval of the fiscal year 2022-23 District Sewer and Parks and Recreation Services budget. We have the staff report.
Yes. So you've seen versions of this budget, if you will, at our June meeting, as well as in the Bartles and Wells report. This is the detailed one. It gives you a look back on the past year, what we had budgeted and what our expenses were, as well as the forward-looking budget for this coming fiscal year. As I pointed out in the prior issues or items, 70%, 75% now probably with the capital costs of our SAM costs. So your hands are obviously tied with that portion of the budget. So what we look at is mostly the O&M for our administrative costs and whatnot. So I'll just turn to page 114.
By the way, I love having numbers on all the pages. Thank you. It's really great.
Good, I'm glad. Page 114, as you can see, our annual sewer service charges are going up, like I mentioned before, because we've increased the sewer charge from $508 per ERU to $660. We're still getting the reimbursement from the assessment district. That is their share or their portion, I should say, of our overhead costs, the office, things like that. That's independent of that $300,000 payment we were talking about before, which is reimbursement of monies we fronted to them. We've got the recology of the Coast franchise fee, which is spelled out in their franchise agreement. We've got the rent for the Picasso preschool, and then we've got miscellaneous of $5,000. So that our revenues are about $2.3 million in total, and that's just operating revenues. And please feel free to jump in or interject if you've got a question. Page 115 is all the SAM costs. As you can see, that totals $1.8 million and change. that's directly from the budget that was passed by Sam back in April or May.
And I will note that the contract collection services has gone down. We hire as a separate contract. It's not part of our obligation under the Joint Powers Authority. We hire Sam to clean the sewer lines and handle emergencies and any problems. And it's great because they're here, they know the system, and they do a good job. And so that's a separate contract that has worked out really well.
Yes, absolutely. And to keep in on, the sharing services, Half Moon Bay and Montara use them as well. Yeah. And I think the collections has gone down in a minor way. I think they budgeted for that smaller cleaning truck here, and that's off this year's budget, as I remember. Going down to page 116. I need my better glasses for this. Our operating administrative expenses or total operating expenditures were about $50,000 higher than we budgeted for, which isn't bad out of a $2.5 million budget. Nothing really went dramatically over on our budget. I point out professional services is a little over for last year, and I don't think it will be the same for this year. That's my cost plus a couple other professional services.
Well, that's the engineers that did the extra projects, right?
Well, the engineers, some of their money is targeted toward the project they do. So when they did the Meteor Creek, that's loaded into the project cost. We have general engineering. I think that's
it's on line 8.
Yeah, line 8. And that's not a big thing. We split that up probably 10 years ago because engineering costs, it skewed what you were looking at. It's part of a design project. It's a different animal than them just consulting with us and whatnot.
Would the professionals include things like the Bartles analysis of the fees, those sorts of things?
Yeah.
We just every few years.
Yeah, and we have different things. We're getting our SSMP. We just got our draft sewer system management plan prepared by Vivian Housen, so she'll go under either that or engineering services.
I want to see that.
Yeah. You're the only one, Barbara. That's 357 pages of pure drudgery. I don't want. Vivian does a great job, but it is still what it is. So, and then moving on to page 117, we've got our sewer non-operating revenues. We split it up this way because basically that's how accountants want us to do it, and the auditors wanted us to do it. The interest on reserves has dropped a little bit. The actual interest rate, I think, has gone from maybe a low of 0.30% to 0.85. The Fed just hiked rates another 0.75%. So we might be soaring up into the 1.5% range. So it's not a lot of money. Connection fees is kind of a estimation based on past years, how many connections we've had and things like that. We generally average around 10 per year. Then you see the SAM refund, which is just a placeholder. I don't hold my breath for that. Then repayment from the assessment district, that's what I was talking about before, that $300,000. This should be our last year that we received that, and that's obviously a substantial amount of money.
But wait, it's showing it 22 and 23. It's going to be the last year? 20,
we just received a payment from them for we're making the payment ourselves, but for the 21, 22, last year's fiscal year, and this current year, 22, 23 will be the last.
Okay.
And then the ERAF refund. So I've kept a bunch of you informed on this whole business with ERAF, and that's the Educational Relief Augmentation Fund. Basically what that is the state comes in and as our share of the property tax, they claw some of that away to fund the schools and whatnot. Certain counties, however, get enough funding that they don't need all that claw away. So we get a refund of it, and it's fantastically complicated. I've actually talked to property tax services down here about it. It's a really complicated formula. You know, this year I called Delia, we're projecting $500,000 in that refund. That's ranged anywhere from $230,000. It's usually around 350. This year it's 500. Again, you know, that's a tough, I can't make that calculation. I don't know how much we'll collect in property taxes. That's all at the county level. So, you know, that's just another guesstimation, if you will. It should be pretty close though. Then down to our capital projects, lower on the page, we've got $350,000 budgeted for the sewer main replacement program. We actually just got bids in today. I haven't finished looking at them yet, but John Rayner just emailed me today. We finished up the Media Creek Crossing project, and that came in kind of near budget. I show a beginning sewer reserves balance of $2.133 million. Capital projects will be $360,000. That's only our. Then transfer from the operating budget, we're going to lose $395,000, if you will, from operations. So overall, our reserves will remain pretty steady. Now your board's going to have I did a deep dive, and we're going to touch on the Parks and Rec for the next. I did a deep dive on everything we've collected for the past since October of 2014 with the property tax and how that's been allocated. And I've got a big spreadsheet that outlines that. And I'm going to present something to your board probably in September to take a look at that, and because we've got costs. And I'll give you, you know, we've got office costs and Delia's costs and my costs that we basically allocated to the sewer district.
Right.
And they should be shared somewhere in some split. And, you know, we'll have to make some kind of estimation on time spent and things like that. How much we want Parks and Rec to take of the office overhead, that kind of stuff. So that'll be a policy decision for your board to make. It's not something I can make, but I'll present you with all the numbers and you can take a look at them. And, you know, we may take 1 or 2 meetings to talk about it because it's pretty in depth.
It's the right thing to do, though. We look forward to your presentations.
Well, you look forward to the SSMP too, so. We've got skewed interests. Then on the page 118 on the Parks and Recreation District budget, we've got, I'm estimating $925,000 in property tax receipts. I've been speaking with our financial person, Nikki Tallman. We had talked about waiting and bundling the any borrowing we want to do for the purchase of the community center property and bundling that with parks. I think with the interest rate environment getting now, I'd probably recommend to your board to go ahead and just get the loan for that property. And if we need funding a year from now, they probably won't give us funding for the parks at this point in time because we don't have anything nailed down enough. But for the land itself, they will. So I'd recommend that we pursue that, and I can present that to your board as well at the next meeting. That sounds good to everybody? Mm-hmm. Okay. Interest on reserves is when we're talking about, so our total revenues are really $930,000-ish, taking away the loan. For expenditures, I've got $719,000. I think my professional services might be a little light at $300,000. I incorporated BKF, who are the civil engineers for the park, as well as Group 4. And, depending on their timing, we're already a month into the year, so we'll have to see how that plays out. Then I have the loan payment if your board goes ahead with the loan. We're going to provide the county with the funding for the pump track once they send us an invoice for that $100,000 that your board contributed. And then we've got that reimbursement to Half Moon Bay, which is basically 18% of whatever we spend on parks, we send over to Half Moon Bay per the agreement we signed with them in 2014 to get the parks and recreation powers.
And were we considering having an analysis to see if that's still the correct number?
Delia contacted Tausig and Associates, and they said it's not a number you can calculate. And Delia, maybe you can remember better than I could what they said in that email.
I'm sorry, what was this regarding?
When you contacted Tausig about the percentage of property tax,
Yeah, there's no way. The county doesn't provide, there's no way the county can provide that information.
Yeah. So when at the time we did this, they did a deep dive into that as well. And I'd have to talk to Shane Morgan at Tausig to find out how he did that. But I was going to talk offline with John Dowdy about that as well.
Okay.
They came up with 18% somehow.
Yeah. And I think they did what's called tax rate areas and things like that, but it's not easy to do. So we'll have to see.
Yeah.
And anyway,
Particularly with
there's building in the unincorporated area in El Granada, but there's been no new houses added to Frenchman's Creek because it's that development. So there should be more property taxes coming from the unincorporated areas now than there were 5 years ago.
Well, and the reality is, though, the property tax base is so large where you all are, that having a few houses added to it or taken away from it shouldn't change that number much. The valuations will be what changes, and I'm not sure Half Moon Bay or El Granada is vastly different in the appreciation of homes, but I don't know that.
How do you define 18% of all money that goes into parks?
So what they did, David, when we got the Parks and Recs powers.
No, I understand that. I know what it is. I'm saying all money that goes into parks. Some of it's easy. You build a playground, you spend money. So that includes money spent on admin for parks, a salary for parks. If we allocate money, if we allocate a budget for parks, 18% of that budget is going to go to Half Moon Bay.
yes.
Yes, 18% of all our expenditures, correct.
No matter what. So anything that we allocate, any overhead costs, anything that's allocated in the budget, 18% of that, whether it's the community ever sees it or not, in terms of, just overhead costs.
I don't want to use the word allocated. It's actually spent. So we don't give them 18% of our budget allocations. We give them 18% of what we actually spend. Yeah.
Yeah, but then when you talk about it in the future, having an agenda item where we specifically talk about that. So that's what I'm saying. Based on, there is some fungibility, I guess you can say, in terms of some of that. So it just is but you're making it clear that yes, if we allocate 570,000 towards Parks and Recs, even though a lot of that is just going to go to overhead costs for Parks and Recs, 570,000 is going to be 18% that's going to go to Half Moon Bay, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And the vast majority of our expenditures will be hard costs or soft, to other people. Our overhead allocation should be relatively minor at this point in time. Yeah.
Okay, but
we actually have no overhead being applied as a park expense.
Well, we have not to this date officially applied overhead, right?
We're going to look at that.
Yeah, but
And I think the point comes that, for example, when we have the seniors, Coastside seniors talking to us about doing programming in our community center, at some point, maybe we want to talk to Half Moon Bay about whether they want to reduce that number to help promote the building of another community center, which certainly would benefit their residents.
And we didn't have quite honestly, we didn't have a lot of choices back in the board didn't have a lot of choices in 2014 because we were trying to
have the conversation.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. So that's the staff report for the budget. So I don't know if there's any other questions or comments. If not.
And our reserves right now are at just over $2 million. And if we get the loan, this doesn't incorporate the loan, right?
No, that incorporates the loan. So that reserve of $2 million, we don't get the 1.8. Yes, because basically when we bought the property, we had 1.8.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was hopeful.
Yeah.
Add to 118.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you
So-
for that.
And I don't know if you've opened the public hearing or not, but
I did indeed.
okay.
Do we have any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the budgets?
So moved.
Can you officially close the public hearing?
No.
I will close the public hearing.
So Nancy moved.
Do we have a second? Come on,
Second.
somebody.
Okay, Eric.
All right. Any further discussion of this motion to approve these budgets as presented?
I feel like a broken record, but I feel like at some point we got to do a deep dive into good faith effort to really reduce the hard duplicate costs that are overlapping at 4 agencies.
Well, the other agencies don't have any parks and recreation. So anyway,
Yeah, that's
Hear
a
you,
part of
David.
it, but some of them do. Half of Bay does, and Montera's talked about that.
all right. Well, David, we appreciate your passion about this issue. Any further discussion? All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Director Seaton,
Aye.
Director Marsh,
Aye.
Director Dye.
Aye.
Director Clark, Director Sukamel.
Yes.
Okay, on motion of Director March, seconded by Director Sukamel, motion carries 5-0.
All right, we did a lot tonight. Are we done?
That's it. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chuck, for all, and Delia, both of you, for all of the good presentations and the information. There's a lot of information in this agenda packet that I think helped us all to understand a lot of these issues better. So thank you very much.
It was a busy week. Let's just say I had four board meetings and three rate increases.
Well, I mean, that's a point, when you look at what's going on in all of the sewer districts in this, pretty much everywhere, everyone's raising rates because they need to bring their infrastructure up to current
Did I just
standards.
mention one thing? We
Yes.
have my coworker is going on maternity leave in a week. So
So
it's gonna
excited.
be, yeah, and she's going to be out for a while. So.
Good. Thank you for letting us know. You know that-
Also, Chuck, the 23rd anniversary gift is a silver plate.
God bless Google, right, Eric?
I will admit. to
Unless
not
you knew
knowing
that off the top
my
of your head.
No, I got a long ways to go before I got to worry about that.
All right. Anything further? Okay, thanks, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks,
Have a good
everybody.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.